Hello, hello. Welcome back to Loki's Librarian. If you are new here, welcome. I am your librarian, Katrina, and on Sundays I do a thing called Books and Booze where I review a book and mix up a cocktail. I am once again recording from a hotel room because my day job has once again sent me on the road. This month I decided to look at some of the dirty dealings our government has gotten itself up to, starting with this week's book, Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s by Tom O'Neill, with Dan Piepenbring, I'm not sure how he pronounces his name. The accompanying cocktail is a Chaos cocktail. It is 2 ounces of Rebel 100 bourbon whiskey, 2 ounces of pineapple juice, 1 ounce of cranberry juice, 1 ounce of club soda. So let's do this. Make sure I have everything with me. Now, there are very few people who are not familiar with the story of the Manson family and the horrific murders of Sharon Tate, Jay Sebring, Abigail Folder, Wojciech Frykowski, Stephen Parent, and then a day later followed up with Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. Usually they're just hyphenated as the Tate LaBianca murders. Oh, I knew it. I knew one little bottle was not quite 2 ounces, which is why I brought a second bottle with me. I'll just have to have a shot of whiskey after it all. Shot of bourbon. The book that prosecuting attorney Vincent Bugliosi wrote about this, wrote after the trial is Helter Skelter. It is one of, if not the absolute best-selling true crime book of all time. It remains tremendously popular even unto today, sparking imaginations and bizarre fan clubs because people are fucking weird and they, worship murderers. I don't know why, but there it is. It's tremendous. So, and O'Neill says quite early on, I think almost in the prologue, he's not a Manson apologist. He's not questioning Manson's guilt or the guilt of any of the sheeples who killed at his command. This isn't about that. He's not trying to point the finger of blame at somebody else because there really is nobody else to point the finger of blame at. Manson and the girls all admitted that this happened. This happened and this was them, and they're the ones who did this horrible thing. Like, that fact has never been questioned or disputed, not even by the author. Since I'm doing everything from my tiny little laptop, I'm trying to get the cocktail mixed up early because I'm going to run out of... I have to scroll past the recipe here in a moment. So let's get this shaken up really quick. This is supposed to go in a rocks glass. Don't have a rocks glass in the hotel room, and I wasn't going to pack one with me, so I'm just using the hotel room glass, which worked quite well. There's just enough room for the 1 ounce of club soda. What he's saying, what O'Neill is saying, what he wrote this book for, and he is able to document in detail, so it's not just a conspiracy theory. In fact, he's very careful to stay away from conspiracy theories. There's much more to the story. Much, much more. Bugliosi, not the good guy that he presents himself to be. In point of fact, O'Neill uncovered evidence that Bugliosi suborned perjury and hid evidence from the defense. Enough so that if any defense attorney picked this up even today, they could make a real argument and case for a new trial for the surviving members of the family who are still in prison. It is in fact that bad. I mean, he would have to get a sympathetic judge who is willing to even look at it, which is hard to come by, right? It's been 40 years, 50 years. It's 50 years since the murders at this point. No, 40 years. So, but yeah, hard pressed to find a judge who would be willing to do it, but because the murders are so freaking infamous, right? But if he could find a good attorney and a good judge, it could happen. I'm not even joking. It's that bad, which I get. All right, I don't want to give them another shot at freedom. I mean, Sharon Tate was 8 months pregnant when she was hung and stabbed to death. Abigail Folger comes from an outstandingly wealthy coffee empire. I mean, good luck getting anybody willing to give that another shot because, hey, heiresses are involved. People are going to hang, or metaphorically, whatever. O'Neill did speak with Bugliosi, presented what he found, at which point Bugliosi declared they were now enemies and began writing a 30-page long threatening letters to O'Neill, his publishers, his editors, his agents. For his part, in addition to the perjury issues, O'Neill found incidents where Bugliosi had beaten his mistress into a miscarriage, then forced her to drop the charges she tried to file against him for assault. Mistress, not girlfriend. He was married when this incident happened. So yeah, he's a charming guy. Oh, that's really good. That's really good. The cranberry and pineapple play very well together. This is quite good. He also believed when his son was born that his son was not his. It was the, I think, mailman's, and he stalked the mailman to the point the poor man had to move and ultimately file suit against Bugliosi for defamation, which Bugliosi lost. had to pay like $12,000 in damages. In relation to the Manson trial, Bugliosi actually was charged with perjury after that, believe it or not, and I don't think he was found innocent. I think they decided not to prosecute ultimately. Absolutely insane. The rabbit hole O'Neill goes down draws some compelling but not conclusive ties to the CIA, and it's not conclusive. It's this not conclusiveness, which is the biggest frustration for O'Neill and largely why I was willing to follow him down the rabbit hole, because he never claims something that he can't absolutely prove. And he admits at the very end that everything he found left more questions than answers, which has got to be tremendously frustrating for the author. It was frustrating to read because you know there's no conclusion at the end. So what exactly did he find? Well, he found that Terry Melcher, who is Bugliosi's star witness and the alleged reason behind the choice of 10050 Cielo Drive as the house, the first house that Manson attacked, had a lot more contact with the Mansons than Melcher wanted to admit to. Like, a lot more. And Bugliosi knew this and supported Melcher's truncated reporting on the stand. There's a whole reason, right? Manson wanted to get revenge on Melcher for not carrying through with the record recording deal that Melcher had promised him. And so he went to the house that had been Melcher's and was now rented by Sharon Tate and her husband Roman Polanski. Not conclusive evidence, but evidence that there were wild sex and drug parties at that residence with the Polanskis, including evidence that Roman Polanski had forced his wife to have sex with 2 men at once on camera, and that she wasn't really into it. This was a personal tape that was found, recorded in the evidence, and then returned to the residence, and Polanski picked it up. I'm going to say allegedly because I'm not 100% certain I am remembering the details from the book, although it is in the book. I may be off on some of the details, and I don't want to get sued by Polanski. What makes it interesting and a little easy to believe that is if you know the history of Roman Polanski, you know that he was in fact later tried and found guilty of violent rape himself. So there's a lot of twistiness going on there. Dennis Wilson, the drummer for the Beach Boys, also had a lot more contact with the Mansons than he wanted people to think. He let the Mansons I'm calling them the Mansons, even though that's obviously not each of their last names. I should call them the family, because that's how they identified themselves. So he let the family basically live at his house for a summer. A lot of people had a lot more contact with the family than they want people to think. Roger Smith, who was Charles Manson's parole officer, became the foster parent to Manson's child with Mary Brunner. Smith tried to claim he didn't really spend that much time with Manson, but the other Smith, Dr. Dave of the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic, which Dr. Dave used to study the behaviors of the hippies in San Francisco, the staff there at HAFMC reported many visits between Manson and Roger Smith. Like, a lot of visits. Like, he was practically using it as his parole office specifically to meet Manson. O'Neill found possible links between Smith and Jolly West, a.k.a. Louis Jolyon West, a.k.a. the #1 researcher for Sidney Gottlieb, the CIA mastermind behind MKUltra. And while there was no smoking gun documents linking West to Manson, is it really too far a leap to wonder if the Manson murders were the ultimate endgame of MKUltra? I mean, think about it. The evidence that O'Neill lays out for West having been ultimately successful in his mind control experiments using combinations of LSD, sodium pentothal, and hypnosis is truly astounding. Like, I think he did it. Not West, not Manson. Again, we already know Manson did. I think West succeeded. I think he figured out the perfect combination to get people to do things they might not otherwise do. And while Manson was clearly not formally educated, I think he dropped out of like the 8th grade or maybe 6th grade, I don't think he was stupid. I mean, just because he's not formally educated in a school does not by any metric mean stupid. If he saw the impact of LSD on the hippie community of the Haight-Ashbury during the Summer of Love, which we know he was there in 1967, he saw the potential to make his own minion army. And boy, did he. With a hold so strong that a decade after the murder, like her first parole hearing came up in like 79, Susan Atkins said that she could still hear Charlie talking to her. That's some strong control right there. And a lot of it was made entirely possible through copious use of LSD and the destruction of any sense of id, any self-ID, wiped out. O'Neill spends the first half of the book poking holes in Bugliosi's telling of events, and these are massive gaping holes that implicate everybody from LAPD to Los Angeles Sheriff's Office to literal World War II heroes. If you've seen or read Band of Brothers, you might recognize the name Buck Compton. That was a knife in the heart, because, you know, those guys are heroes, right? But he's in here, and they're all implicated in, at best, gross incompetence, to fraud, to a major cover-up, and nobody knows why it was covered up. Of what? Who fucking knows, right? Cover-up of the fact that they could have stopped the LaBianca murders if they had just talked to each other. Because, like a week, 2 weeks before the Tate murders, was it Gary Hinman? There was another... Yeah, Hinman. Boy, God, I love it when I remember shit like that. It just came out of nowhere. Yeah, Gary Hinman. He had been family adjacent. He wasn't a member of the family, but he did live in the same canyon as Spawn Ranch, and had not even a falling out. He was like a genuine, like, gentle hippie type. And for whatever reason, Manson got pissed at him and sent a couple of his followers to kill him, and wrote similar type messages to the ones found at the Tate murder. Except Hinman's location was in the LA County Sheriff's Office jurisdiction, and the LA County Sheriff, I mean, the news of the Tate murders were all over the place, right? I mean, obviously that's huge news. Sharon Tate was a major star. Roman Polanski was a major Hollywood producer, director. This was big news, and the things that were written on the walls were not hidden for long, if at all. But the LA County Sheriff never reached out to LAPD and said, hey, I think we might be looking at the same people, which would have hyper-focused them immediately on the family. Because they already knew that Beausoleil, I don't remember Beausoleil's first name. Now I'm going to look that up. Brian? Bobby. I was close. It was a B name. Bobby Beausoleil, who they knew was one of the family, had already said he did so on orders. So they absolutely could have stopped the LaBianca murders if they had just talked to each other. Didn't. Why? Who fucking knows? All right. If Bugliosi had actually tied the Hinman murders to the other two, it would have made his conspiracy charge against the family much easier to prove. Didn't do it. No one knows why. That's the most frustrating thing about reading, and I can only imagine about trying to research and write this book, is there are so many loose ends that are never going to be tied, leaving one just pure speculation. O'Neill tries very hard not to become a conspiracy theorist and to only report what he could definitively prove, although he does say many times that he started to get paranoid, especially when these avenues with links to the CIA kept opening up. He started to get paranoid about what could they find. Like the information he came across for Jolly West was because West had been a teacher at UCLA, and when he died, he left all of his files to UCLA, and they hadn't gotten around to cataloging it yet. He found actual classified documents in those boxes that should have probably been returned to the CIA decades ago. Weren't. Obviously, he never told UCLA what he found or what he had. The closest he ever came is he did speak with a senator from Pennsylvania. His family lived in Pennsylvania. His parents did. And then he got paranoid, like, if I give this to the senator had sat on the Warren Commission. That's why he was reaching out to that senator. The Warren Commission is the commission that researched and did the investigation into Kennedy's assassination. He started to get paranoid, going, wait, if I give this information to the senator, are those files going to disappear before I can finish going through them? So he backed out of the meeting. So you get paranoid talking about the CIA, especially if you watched the review I did on Snowden's book, and now you know just how deep that rabbit hole goes and what their capabilities are. It's not just the NSA, the CIA can use that too. O'Neill doesn't want to go down any conspiracy theory rabbit holes. I have no such compunctions. I'm going to throw my own out there. I think that Roger Smith was given guidance by Jolly West on how to brainwash and control someone using LSD, and Smith introduced the idea to Manson with the full blessing of the federal parole system. Why? Because there were many such operations in the 1950s and 60s, from FBI's J. Edgar Hoover had his counterintelligence program called COINTELPRO, CIA's Chaos. They had their own program called Chaos, which was grossly illegal because it operated within the United States, using U.S. citizens as test subjects. where they would basically dope people up with LSD and then have them have sex in this sort of spiked honey trap, and then of course get them on camera or recording and then have blackmail material. Oh, lovely. Both the FBI and the CIA's pet projects were geared toward showing the instability and negative aspects of the countercultural movements on the American way of life. And what better way to demonstrate that than a series of grisly murders conducted against the rich and famous by a band of drug-addled, violent hippies who live in a commune and call themselves the Family. And it worked. I mean, that was the Tate LaBianca murders represented the last gasp of the peace and flower child movement, rocketing in a decade of chaos in the 1970s with, you have Richard Nixon, you have the oil embargoes from the OPEC nations. It just, everything went downhill from there. O'Neill doesn't say that. He says none of that. That's my own personal conspiracy theory, and I have accepted it off of the evidence he provided because we don't know where else this goes. We're never going to know. All right. He explicitly doesn't say it because while the pieces of the puzzle are there, he was never able to find the top of the puzzle box that shows what the whole picture is supposed to look like. All right. Which is why this is my conspiracy theory. But it makes sense. But, I mean, like the Kennedy assassinations and the Epstein files, we will probably never know the full and complete story of how Manson was able to obtain the level of control he did to orchestrate the crime of the century. And so, like all good mysteries, the author leaves it on a cliffhanger, even knowing the mystery will never be solved. This book was quite good. It kept me reading through the last page. The only problem I had with it was when he was talking about Manson was apparently a big fan of Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land, and the synopsis that the author provides, O'Neill provides, of Heinlein's seminal work, I was like, that's not the book I read. Where the hell did he get that information from? Because that is not at all what I got out of it. I don't think he grokked Stranger in a Strange Land. But he let the readers down gently in the end, letting them know there were no solutions to this most magnificent of puzzles. And that's it for this week. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys next Sunday. Bye.